Hello, listeners. This is Kat. Welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This is the continuation of See You in the Morning. This will be Part 12, Chapter 12, entitled Nezu Knows His Teachers. Finally, after being rocked back and forth in their arms, Midori had cried himself to sleep. Neither of them were ready to let their kid go, so they pulled the two hospital beds together. It had been a long couple of days for all three of them, but especially their little neighbor. So they stayed there, with the sleeping Midori curled between them and clutching onto Shota's shirt like it was his anchor. Shota smiles, seeing Zashi run his fingers gently through the teen's curls, both the pro-heroes just basking in the reassurance that the teen is there and safe with them. Sadly, there's a lot that needs to happen to keep their stray, or kit, as Namuri had been calling the green teen. I assume you want to take him in. Like that's even a question. And Zashi's right, there's no other answer that they would give. Midori is theirs. He trusted them even if only a little bit. Shota knows how scary it is to admit something is wrong and ask for help. The first help he ever accepted was Zashi's, and that was years after the blonde had been building their trust. He was proud of his kid. Shota's heart clenches again painfully, as it had been so much recently, just thinking about how much the young teen must have gone through. Just how hard the kid had been tried by the world. His chest had been a mix of rage and pride since Midori had opened up to him. To think that he'd been so alone and likely hurt, but they hadn't done anything. They were right there. But that's over now. They know now, and they won't let it go on any further. They'll make sure that the green teen is safe and cared for. Nezu just laughs at Hizashi's plain answer. Perfect. Now, you can come in, Tsukuuchi. Shota watches as the closed door opens to reveal a sheepish-looking Tsukuuchi for a second. All he can do is stare blankly before grinning in a way he knows freaks Namuri out. Chio told him about the rated 18-plus hero bemoaning how scary his grin can be at their get-togethers, when Namuri had left the elder hero with the drink tab one time as payback. And if Shota had grinned more around Namuri for a month or so after that, well, then that was between him and his husband, who definitely didn't find it hilarious. So that's why Nezu's ears kept flicking to the door. The detective must have been speaking at a volume Shota's boss could hear, but that the rest of them wouldn't. Sneaky little rat. Shota almost grins wider when Tsukuuchi hesitates while walking closer to them, seeing his grin. But he does have some restraint and empathy for others, so he doesn't. This time. I assume, then, that you recorded this interview. He can't stay living by himself, so you better have enough proof to get our foster papers accepted. Of course, Aizawa. What do you take me for? The detective jokes, seemingly much calmer now that Shota isn't grinning at him, though he notices that Tsukuuchi quickly becomes more serious and settles into the last empty chair in the room. I'll head back down to the station in a minute to start getting the charges filed and a case opened up. I'm sure Nezu will be able to get your foster papers fast-tracked. With pleasure. No way am I letting such a student slip through my paws. Shota shivers at the gleeful look on Nezu's face, black eyes glinting as he stares off into his own warped imagination, he's sure. All of the employees at UA are painfully aware of their boss's many academic degrees and masters, including his main focus of law. The Courts and Hero Commission were grateful the day that Nezu announced that he would be retiring from the courtroom to oversee UA, though that didn't stop the rat from dusting off his expertise whenever he saw necessary. Soon after the detective leaves, taking both his and Nezu's recorders with him, leaving just Shota and Zashi and Nezu to watch over Midori as he sleeps. Sadly, the quiet doesn't last long, and a knock sounds at the once again closed door. Shot in an effort to keep the room quiet enough for the kiddo to sleep, even with the hospital being very busy. Shota shares a glance with his husband, questioning who could possibly be visiting. Namuri's currently doing a task for Nezu, and Tensei is watching over his little brother. They don't really know anyone else. At least, no one else who would visit. Come in. The door swings open, and in walks Dr. Maisie, soon followed by Hinto Sei. Well, this would be interesting. Shota isn't really sure how he feels about either of the women. Sei-san had allowed a kid to live alone for who knows how long. She had helped Midori hide the fact that he had been abandoned from people who could have helped him. But she also obviously cared about the teen and risked a lot to help the kid keep a secret. Reluctantly, Shota knows that all the lying was likely Midori's idea, as the woman had hinted multiple times during their encounters that she wanted Midori to open up to Shota. It wasn't her fault the teen was stubborn and ignored her. Dr. Maisie, on the other hand, hadn't necessarily done anything wrong. She simply complied with reasonable requests from a patient under her care, though there's still no explanation on why she had become the teen's doctor so suddenly or why Midori had knew of her. It's obvious that they hadn't met until earlier, considering that they had to introduce themselves. Even with all these new answers, Shota still has a growing list of questions. Sadly, the only people who could currently answer were people he didn't trust much, and who likely wouldn't tell him anything without the permission of his little neighbor. who was sleeping, and Shota would like to keep it that way. "Is Izuku okay? He didn't have another panic attack, did he?" Sei-san steps forward toward the sleeping teen before seeming to think better, catching Zashi's piercing gaze, and decides to fret from a distance. "No, he's fine. No panic attacks, though he did disassociate for a while and did break down." The woman's shoulders seemed to both slump with relief and tense up at his words, causing Shota to finally actually look at the new guest, to their shared hospital room. The younger woman looks ragged, her beige hair looking unwashed and messy, bags under her eyes which speak of exhaustion and stress, as well as the way that her clothes look rumpled. Thinking about it, the kid did say that her parents had been attacked, and they were in the hospital here. Can't help but feel for her. It's stressful when a loved one gets hurt, let alone two at once. "Thank Kami. I just want to... Can I come closer?" She blinks hard, shaking her head slightly, seemingly trying to clear her thoughts up and help ease her anxieties. Zashi must have noticed her state as well, because he stops glaring at the woman, yellow-green eyes warming. "Of course, Sei-san. The little listener is just asleep, so be careful not to wake him." Upon hearing permission from Hisashi, she rushes forward, pausing just before she reaches Midori to glance over once more up at him and Zashi. Shota just nods slightly. He may not trust her, and he may not understand all of her actions up to this point, but Midori said that she was like an older sister to him, and seeing her now, Shota knows she feels the same about the teen. Without needing any more prompting, Sei-san starts checking over the teen and running her hands gently through his curls like Zashi had been. The sound of someone clearing their throat makes Shota look back up from the pair. "I apologize for any distress or upset my actions have caused you." Dr. Maisie bows, though it's not nearly as deep as one would bow for a full apology, which makes Shota snort internally. "Though I do not regret it. Izuku was my patient, and he made a request of me which was perfectly reasonable. I was unaware that you were his homeroom teacher, so I am sorry for ignoring any requests or demands on his health beforehand." That was probably one of the most backhanded, stubborn apologies that Shota's ever gotten, though for all her stipulations she seemed sincere. He also notices how she used Midori's given name with ease. Another puzzle piece without a place. But for now. "Why is it that you became his doctor? It has been bothering me." The woman straightens, looking slightly confused before snapping her fingers, which seems to grab Sei-san's attention, making her look up at the other woman. The two sign quickly between one another, both using the same sign language that his student has been. What's the connection? The doctor looks surprised for a second, from whatever Sei-san signs, and quickly signs back before huffing and turning to look at Shota once more. "Don't tell anyone. But I'm quirkless. That's why Izuku requested me as his doctor. I thought that you would have known, given that you seem to know about some of the other cues that I thought you would have recognized my markers." Wow. For every answer that Shota receives, he gains another bucketful of questions. The urge to nap right now and just ignore all these needless puzzles pulls at him. Why does everything have to be complicated with this teen? What cues? Did this have something to do with the sign language? Or maybe there was something. His brain must have noticed something if she thought that he had been reacting to these supposed clues, but what was it? He looks at Sei-san, scanning her from head to toe, looking over details and anything that could be classed as a cue or a marker like Dr. Maisie was implying. He didn't notice anything jarring, so he quickly does the same to the bemused-looking doctor. What is it? What is he missing? He looks down at Midori. There's an itch in the back of Shota's mind. His eyes drift toward the teen's bare neck. Something. He looks up at Sei-san, who looks encouraging, even if completely exhausted, having settled into the chair Detective Suguti had abandoned not 20 minutes prior. She's not wearing a necklace. So what is it? Zashi gasps quietly beside him, and Shota looks over, only to see his husband looking at Dr. Maisie. Obviously, his husband had noticed the marker before him. So he looks at her again. This time he finds it, a necklace. It's a dainty metal chain, with a small red four-pointed star. He'd seen that before. He looks swiftly back at Midori's fake aunt, scanning for a four-pointed star. There. The woman's wearing earrings as well as a bracelet, both with the same red stars. He looks back down at his sleeping teen. Thinking back, Shota tries to remember what the teen's necklace had looked like. He'd never gotten the chance to see it up close, as the kid seemingly covered it with his uniform while at school, only seeing it through panes of glass during the night. The red stars. They mark he was quirkless. But Sei-san was supposed to have a minor temperature regulation quirk, which Shota is just now realizing would be really easy to fake. Just like how some of Midori's documents stated that he had a minor mutation quirk, which gave him his green coloring. The doctor also told them to keep the fact that she was quirkless quiet. Does that mean that she too was also lying about her quirk status. Suddenly, things are making more sense, especially when he thinks about all the damning statistics surrounding Musutafu's quirkless population. In the signing, is that another cue? His husband asks, looking as shocked as Shota's feeling. All these clues hidden in plain sight for them, to see for days now, but they missed them all. The two women basically had to spoon-feed them the clues. Yes, those are both identifiers for quirkless. Does this help you understand? You were seemingly reacting to them, so I just assumed that you were in the know on some level. Even if just to understand that I was quirkless and therefore was asked for by Izuku. Quirkless protect quirkless. He chimes in after the doctor, both nodding at the sentiment. Shota's starting to get the feeling that there's a lot more to the quirkless than he'd ever been led to believe. A private language, secret markers so they could find each other, widespread forgery of documents and papers. It's all pointing toward an organized community of some sort. Shota honestly doesn't know what to think. He's a bit in awe, if he's correct. Thankfully, he feels the kid start stirring a second later, saving him from a full-out existential crisis. Probably got woken up from all the speaking and movement in the room. Though Shota wishes the kid could have slept a bit more. Izuku wakes up suddenly. There's no gasping for air or springing upward, but there's also no slow wading into being aware, like when he sometimes is waking up. One moment he's asleep, and the next he's staring up at Present Mic and Eraser from, seemingly, in their laps. A second later, Eraser's looking down at him, dark eyes stressed but warm as they meet Izuku's. Honestly, Izuku thinks his dark-haired neighbor looks a bit shell-shocked, if anything. Hey there, Midori. Did you have a nice nap? He just makes an agreeing sound, his joints creak and click as he pulls himself into a sitting position, still situated between his two neighbors. Hinto? His boss is here. When did she get here? Where's Fuwashi? Hey, Izu. Me and Lillian were just talking with your teachers. They know that we're all quirkless now. Lillian must be Dr. Maisie's given name. She had mentioned that her mom is American and that her dad is second-generation Japanese. The couple had met in America and had moved back to Japan a year before she was born, during their walk back to his hospital room. Likely her trying to distract Izuku from the Sei situation, so the more American given name makes sense. Wait, they know? Wait, what? But what about your documents? They can't know. What about Dr. Maisie's job? He whips around to look at the blonde and the black-haired adults, who both look varying degrees of surprise at Izuku's sudden movement and intense gaze. Izuku doesn't worry about the observing Nezu. He knows that the rodent will understand the need to keep this quiet. They didn't have just any connections in the quirkless community. There were plenty of hidden helpers, such as a certain rodent who studies and sometimes practices law. There's a reason UA is one of the few high schools that accepts the quirkless, but that's a story for another time. You can't tell anyone. This needs to stay between us. The two adults merely nod. Thank Kami. Izuku sighs, shoulder slumping, and he finds himself leaned up against his dark-haired neighbor. You okay there, little listener? Do you need some painkillers? It's been a while since your last dosage, and you're not completely healed yet. He just nods into Eraser's shoulder, lets them interpret what he means. Today's been a lot. His whole body's aching, and his brain feels like someone pummeled it for a while. He is completely drained. He can't believe this is all happening. He told his neighbors the truth, even if they don't know everything. His brain pauses. They know all of this, and yet they still stayed. They even stayed with Izuku while he slept. He feels his cheeks warm slightly from embarrassment. He can't believe that he cried himself to sleep on top of his neighbors, even worse, his teachers. Thankfully, no one mentions his red-tinted face while Dr. Maisie collects his painkillers and hands them to him alongside a glass of water. Soon enough, Izuku's dozing leaned fully against Aizawa, languidly basking in the attention of Present Mike's fingers once again in his hair, and Eraser tapping a silent beat against his leg. Hinto leaves at some point along with Dr. Maisie, both heading to the Sei's hospital room. Izuku simply listens passively as his principal and neighbors chat, not paying attention to what they're actually talking about. Between one moment and the next, Izuku slips away into dreams once more, this time thankfully filled with pleasant images of a family playing with a cute little tabby cat, and a large white cat as music plays in the background. Stars gleaming on each of the family members. For once, Izuku enjoys sleep. Has the little listener gone back to sleep, Sho? Shota looks downward, having not noticed the change in the teen's breathing, too distracted talking with Nezu about their foster paperwork and how best to handle the situation. But surely enough, Midori is asleep once more, fully curled up against Shota's side, tucked under his right arm, hands once more clutching his shirt. Shota feels something warm well up in his chest, taking in the relaxed and happy expression on his kid's face. It's nice to see him relax for once. Yeah, The kid is out. Nezu clears his throat quietly, drawing their attention again. If the paperwork gets submitted by tonight, I can have it put through swiftly, meaning you could have Midoriya here home by tomorrow evening. That grabs Shota's attention. He hates hospitals and would love to get out of this one. He normally would have tried to escape already if it weren't for wanting to keep Midori close to him and Hisashi. Can we do the paperwork now? Hisashi cackles joyously at Shota's eager response, though Shota knows that Zashi feels the same, even if not for the same hospital-hating reasons. They want to get their kid home. To a real home. Certainly, Shota. I already have it on me. Shota and Nezu share matching dark grins, and Zashi shivers. If Nomuri were here, she would probably cry at their expressions, though the thought only makes him grin wider. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 12 of See You in the Morning. Chapter 13 will be next. Hope you all are still enjoying it. As always, thank you so much for listening.